Hello and welcome to Acceptable Madness, the podcast for depressed people. My name is Scott McKinney, and today we're going to be talking about getting out of bed in the morning, which seems like such a trivial thing, but because this podcast is about depression, I'm sure you know that it's probably not a trivial thing at all. Today is actually kind of a momentous occasion because my girlfriend Alex is actually sitting in the room with me, and now recording this podcast seems a lot more like I have an audience as opposed to just talking into a mic and wondering if anybody's going to stumble upon it. So it's a bit weird, but I think it's a good step for being a podcaster because the whole goal is hopefully people listen to it, so it doesn't matter if it's now or later. Plus, I do it all in one take, so literally nothing changes. But the reason that I wanted to talk about the whole getting out of the bed in the morning thing, which is kind of, it goes hand in hand with depression. It's what a lot of people think of whenever they think about depression, is people that have like a hard time when they wake up in the morning. They have a hard time getting out of bed because they don't have any motivation or drive or ambition, and they don't know how to start their day, or they just don't want to, or there's something compelling them to just continue lying in bed. There's a lot of reasons for it, and I wanted to talk about it because I found some ways that me personally has been able to more consistently get out of bed, be more motivated, and not every day is a winner, but we'll talk about that too. So I'll just dive into it. So I used to, in the past, I used to have a lot, I didn't have as good a grasp on the whole depression thing as I do now. Basically, what I would do is just kind of accept that I'm miserable all the time. And then I would always have these ideas of, in the future, it will change, probably. And that was always the motivator, was in the future, it'll get better. And every time I thought that, I didn't know at the moment, but now that I'm looking back, it was kind of self-destructive because hoping that it's going to get better and just sitting there and kind of accepting it as is not the most productive way to really get out there and try to make a difference on your own psyche and your own spirits. So what that would kind of lead to is, well, if it's just going to get better, then something will happen that's not going to be driven by inaction or activity that I do, but it'll just probably get better in the future. And that's setting yourself up for failure because you might feel better one random day. Maybe you're a bit like me where it's a bit bipolar. So one day you'll wake up and you'll spring out of bed, and another day you'll wake up and shower at 3:00 and have cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then go back to bed. So there's all sorts of days like that, but assuming that it just gets better in the future is not, in my opinion, the appropriate way to go about it. It seems, in terms of depression, it seems a bit naive. Just because it's kind of an excuse to not try to make anything better. And the whole thing with depression is it's basically your brain trying to find anything that it can possibly find to make you more miserable. So kind of your brain telling you that it will just get better and you don't have to work for it is, I mean, that's the dream, really. That's what you hope for, but it's a bit unrealistic. So that's the thought that I used to have, and I know a lot of people still have that thought. So basically, the way that current Scott gets out of bed more effectively and is able to wake up and not feel the struggle of crawling out of bed or going to work or doing anything like that, just basically the mundane or the required tasks in a day. The reason that I am a bit more comfortable doing that is just because I don't think that life is just going to get better overnight. I've kind of accepted that depression's just part of who I am, and I don't expect it to go away, but I'm kind of okay with living with it because I use it as a bit of a motivator for me. So for me, whenever I wake up, if I'm in a great mood, then perfect. I'll go to work, I'll come back, I'll do some writing or record a podcast or work on my blog or something like that. Something to keep me busy and just do something that I really like. Because having a job is not something that, I mean, I know that it's required, but it's not something that I find a lot of joy and fun in. So it's the projects that I do in my spare time that I have a lot more fun with, such as this podcast. So, but basically, what I do to try to get out of bed in the morning is just, one, it has to get done, and procrastinating it is just going to make it feel a bit worse throughout the day. But what I do is I basically look forward to the things after work that I have set up. So whether it's a good day at work or a bad day at work, I try to just leave it at work and totally ignore it and try to separate myself from my career basically as much as possible, except for the stuff that I'm doing in my own time. And then I come home and if I still have energy, then I will work on whatever project is being driven at that moment. But it's knowing that I have something to look forward to every day, that even if I'm in the worst mood ever, I'm just feeling really down in the dumps, a lot of very negative and harmful thoughts, knowing that I have something afterwards that I even like a little bit, and even if I hate it that day, like say I'm in a really bad mood and I really just don't want to write or do anything, knowing that it's still there and that I have some level of passion for it is enough to make me feel a bit better about how I've spent my day and my time and how I will be spending it again in the future. Basically, it's just the way that I kind of start my day and get excited about it is by acknowledging that I have depression, and I acknowledge that it is not going anywhere, and I acknowledge that there's no quick fix, whether it's prescribed or otherwise. But for me, I find comfort in acknowledging that it's there and just kind of trying to say fuck it and just ignoring it to the best of my ability. I guess ignoring it's not the best way to put it, because I don't want to repress those thoughts, or I don't want to ignore them. They're good to have a grasp on and understand where the thoughts are coming from and how they're coming and what the thoughts are. But acknowledging that they're there and then trying to continue your day-to-day by just treating them like they have no impact on you is, one, incredibly difficult. And again, nothing's an overnight fix. So it's not like I could, and I know that there's no way that, me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if I just walked up to him and was like, hey, if you just acknowledge that you're depressed and then try to do something else, then you'll feel better all the time. I know that that's bullshit. And I know that there's a lot more thoughts and practice and time that goes into feeling better. So I know that it's not a one-stop shop, but just knowing that it's there, knowing that it's not going away, and acknowledging it as opposed to pretending that it's not there and kind of hiding under a veil that you don't want to show to anybody is that's how I deal with it a little bit. The other thing is knowing that with having all these projects that I have going on, and I kind of pour my heart and soul into all of them, that feels nice. If no one reads them, fine. If people do read them, great, because I do think that if the right person finds the right work done by someone else, or a better way to have an outlet for themselves, whether it's them doing a hobby or whatnot, that can also be very productive in helping them get over the depression and the depressed thoughts that they have at that moment. So it's just it's a mix of that, but I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is waking up in the morning isn't that bad if you can find a reason to want to get out of bed even a little bit. And it doesn't have to be big projects that you have on the horizon, because not every day is going to be a winner. I don't wake up every day and get excited. 50% of them still suck. But for those 50%, if I can find something in that day to make me a bit happier, then that's a win. So I mentioned earlier that you might have one of those days where you wake up and shower at 2, and then you have cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That in itself can be a win, as long as you're enjoying Fruity Pebbles, which is my choice of cereal. And just finding a way to take any grain of happiness or satisfaction or anything out of that day. Having days where you just get defeated by depression, they're going to happen without a doubt, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. It's like, I don't know, it's basically like an addiction. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. If you relapse, it's terrible, but you just got to wake up the next day and try to do it your best again. Like, I mean, I have really bad anxiety also. So one thing that I do all the time is I actually don't bite my nails, but I bite the cuticles and skin around my nails, which is disgusting. And my hands bleed a lot. And there have been times where I'll go on stretches of an entire year or a few months or a few weeks or a few days without picking them. And then eventually I'll start picking them again just because it's a nervous habit that I have. And even though I went back to picking or biting my cuticles, the days that I didn't, it was still a victory every day. All you have to do is find some reason, even if it's the most microscopic thing out there, and even if it only means something to you, like eating Fruity Pebbles instead of Cocoa Puffs or something, just find some reason to get out of bed, and that's kind of all you need. But if you can't find a reason to get out of bed, then it's going to be a lot harder to try to get out of bed. And I mean, like, if you're in a job that you're not happy with and you don't have anything after work to look forward to, then you wake up, you don't want to go to work. And when you come home, it's just dreading that next day of work. And that's not helpful. In my experience, I had an internship at one point, and it was before I kind of found a lot of the emotional outlets that I use. But I would wake up early in the morning, go to work. I would get home at like 5:30, and then I would just sit down and play video games until like sometimes 1 a.m, meaning that I'm getting like maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, and I require a lot more sleep than that. But the reason that I would go to bed so late was because the thought process, and it doesn't make any sense, and I knew that it didn't make sense, but I still used it, was the later I go to bed, the later I have to wake up and go to my job. And with that kind of mentality, I hated my job. I would wake up, I would get there late, I would sometimes leave early. I was not a very productive member of the team, and whenever I came home, I was still very unhappy, but I was just using some way to kill my time, as opposed to trying to better my situation. And I mean, for a little bit, it was helpful, but a lot of the time, it was it was just me using my time in whatever way I could to not think about work, and it wasn't helpful. If you do an internship over the summer for 3 months and then that's the mentality you have the whole time, that's not a good summer. And every day getting out of bed is a struggle. So waking up and finding one thing out of your day that you can be happy about, whether it's the cup of coffee that you're going to have, the type of cereal or eggs that you're going to eat, the garden that you pass on the way to work if you drive past one. If it's a snowy day, say that there's a nice flat, untouched, flat layer of snow on the ground. Anything that you could possibly think of, that's all you need. It'll still be hard, but at least you'll have something to look forward to. Thanks.